you'll have a cowboy that just does day work and he just travels the country and that's what he does.
Yeah.
He doesn't know anything else. So he'll just go from ranch to ranch every other summer and, work in different places across the country.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Agriculture Podcast. Clayton's in the studio today, and we're joined by the newest member of our team, Eric Granado. I'm going to let Eric introduce himself before we get started.
Hey, what's up?
Very casual.
Is that a good intro?
That's a good intro.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Man, I don't know. What do you guys want to know? Got a lot to say. A lot of it's not important, but a lot to say. So.
Well, where'd you grow up?
Well, grew up in Oklahoma. It's where I spent like the formidable years of my life. So kind of from 8th grade to high school to college. And then after college, I moved to Portland, Oregon to get out of Oklahoma for a little bit and get away from home, and went broke. Moved back to Oklahoma in 2018 and been back ever since.
Oh, this is new info to me.
Yeah.
I can see the Portland.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that as an insult entirely, but I can see some of that. That makes more sense.
Well, I went there after I had very big aspirations to work in sportswear. That was kind of like, I was an athlete growing up. So you follow a lot of brands and getting interested in them, and the sportswear mecca of the world is in Portland. You got Nike, Adidas, Columbia, Under Armour just moved part of their headquarters up there. I mean, Keen Footwear as well. There's a ton of companies up in Portland. If you want to be in sportswear, that's the place to be. And so I wanted to move up there and interviewed at Nike. I can't tell you how many times, and just never really got my opportunity. And like I said, just kind of tried to float around, get interviewed, and just didn't happen. So,
Tell us a little bit about, like, your background is in film. Is that correct?
No, not really. I actually failed photography in college. Funny enough.
Yeah, I didn't say that in the job interview.
I know. No, I wasn't really that great of a student. It was education wasn't really like, drilled in me. But the one class that really like stuck out to me was my ad and PR class, my junior year. We just got a new professor. He was in ad and PR for his whole career, decided to come and teach. And the very first test we had, like almost everybody bombed it. Mm-hmm. And he was like, we're not going to do tests the rest of the year. Usually when you get a professor, and everybody fails, it's like, oh, well, it's on the students. Like, no, actually it was more on me, the teacher. And we did more group projects and actual, we helped real businesses in the town that we were in. That helped me more understand versus just trying to study and take a test on something. And it was more about memory versus actual, application and using, the knowledge that we were getting. So that was kind of like the start of my interest in it. And I didn't get my first camera until I moved to Portland and met a buddy up there, and he sold me his camera, and I used it very sparingly. I didn't really know how to use it, just kind of using it every now and then, and ended up selling it myself, and didn't really have like an interest in it until I moved back home. And
Timeline wise, where are we at now?
2018.
Okay.
When I moved back home, and I was slowly getting back into the creative stuff, but I didn't really know how. And once again, I was broke at this time. And so, I asked my mom, I'm like, hey, can you at least help me get this? And I'll pay it back on my next check or whatever. Got that camera, and ever since then, it's just been like skyrocket.
Self-taught?
Yeah, self-taught.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what piqued your interest in it when you came home?
I think it was I don't know, it was just something to express myself in a way. was like, you know what? Like I've always had like this creative streak. I look back, like I made like short films in middle school and stuff and elementary school, anything that consisted of a video, and that was like what I like had so much fun with.
Can we watch those?
Probably not. Back in elementary school, we did like this. I had like French class, and we had to recreate Goldilocks. Yeah, I was Little Bear. So, I like towered over like Goldilocks and everybody else. Like I was, yeah. I'm not gonna watch that though. It's on YouTube somewhere, but I couldn't tell you where it is.
YouTube deep dive,
dude. It's like from like 2006, 2005.
Sheesh.
Yeah. It's like 20 years old. Yeah,
classic.
Yeah, so that I always had like this little creative streak to me, but I never really like honed it in. Because sports was all I knew growing up. Because when you're an athlete, like you don't really think about any alternatives. You just think about your sport and that's it.
Right.
It wasn't until after college is when I actually started thinking about, stuff outside of sports.
Yeah.
So, because your identity is like really wrapped up into whatever sport you're playing.
Sure. So, just kind of get us into 2024. So, how did you wind up sitting in Kentucky doing a podcast with a couple dudes?
It's a good question. In January, I was like emailing a ton of people, and I was like, "Hey, I'm just trying to, get after it this year. I'm available for work, available for hire, freelance opportunities, blah blah blah. I was just trying to put my name out there and be, really at least just show some sort of initiative.
Yeah.
And I reached out to Clayton, and he was like, "Well, I got this project. I can't make it. And see if you can, if you want to take it." So I quoted them. They turned me down, and I think
It's okay. That's a customer both of us are happy we didn't work with. So we don't feel too bad about that.
Yeah, it's not too bad. So
not that we treat our customers that way, but this is just one. If we told the stories, which we don't need to share their stories, you'd be like, "Oh yeah, that sounds pretty rough." And so Eric and I are both like, "That's probably pretty good." That's
probably for the better. And I don't know.
I honestly felt a little bad giving it to you, but I was like, he wants some projects. I'll send it.
Yeah, I just needed something. And I don't know, like a few weeks later, you were just like, "Hey, I'm hiring for this role. I want you to apply for it."
Yeah, I specifically remember I was in the Denver airport, and Eric actually called me, telling me he didn't get the project, and he was asking me some questions about, hey, should I go on freelancing? Should I go get a job or different things? And Eric and I had only talked like one or two times on the phone before this. And I was like, well, here's my advice. Here's what I think you should do. But also, I'm hiring. You should send me your resume. And immediately, like as soon as he sent it in, I was like, oh yeah, he's the most qualified person for this position. We had to apply, without a doubt. So, which if you guys don't know, like we'll link all of his stuff in the podcast description. But Eric is a very talented photographer and videographer. Like so Eric is our production manager and our creative director for Atlas Media Solutions. I previously was our creative director, but I'm kind of at my my skill peak when it comes to the creative industry. Like I've gotten this far with my knowledge and figuring it out on my own, but I'm officially at that cap where it's like I'm too busy running a business to be like the best creative director I could be. And so I was like, okay, now we need to find someone who's better at this than I am. And Eric is definitely that guy. And so I sent his stuff to Neil, and Neil's like, sheesh, this guy is awesome. And I was like, we got to figure out how to hire him. And here he is sitting in Kentucky with us now.
Well, I know the video production manager, but creative director, I mean, that must come with a pay bump, right?
I'll take it out of my salary.
Yeah, totally.
I haven't paid myself.
I went to Nashville yesterday to pick him up, and I noticed that he is a negotiator.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I noticed very early.
I sent him his job offer, and he said, actually, bump that up.
Hey,
and I said, I appreciate the confidence. Sold.
That's the first time I ever done that. I was like, you know what? I did my research, but I was like, it's got to negotiate everything.
That's right. It really is I think most people miss that there's room for negotiation in almost everything.
Dude, I bought a TV from Best Buy, and I knocked the price down like $200 because I had cash. I was like, hey, I have this much cash. Would you sell me that TV right now?
Really?
They're like, let me go. Yeah, I swear.
We gotta start buying our camera equipment that way.
Dude, I'm not kidding. It was an open box TV, but I was like, still like, And I heard like, you can just negotiate stuff open box, if it's already been brought back. And so it was like, I don't know, it was like a $550 TV. I knocked the price off like $200. And I was like, I was just like, this is how much I got. Will you guys take it? And he was like, yeah, he's good with it.
So Eric, on top of being the creative director, is also now going to be our sales director.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit more about like you have worked in the Western industry before, and that was another thing that I was like, okay, whoever we're hiring for this position, we want to also broaden our scope of work because we don't want to be too siloed in what we do. We love agriculture, and a part of agriculture is ranching. Even though we're like 90% farm these days, we want to do our best to unify the two sides that historically have been divided. So tell us a little bit more about like, hey, how did you get into that side of agriculture in that industry? Because you're not just some Joe Schmo video guy that I picked up off the street. Like, you've worked specifically in Western industries before and have a background in this. So how did that happen?
I was, this was like 2018 is when I, recently got my camera, and I was like, I shot for a few months, and I was like, man, where do I want to take this? Like, what do I want to do with it? And I was like, I want to do something with fly fishing. That sounds fun. I liked fly fishing. I like the idea of fly fishing a lot. And I was like, and
that's most fly fishermen. They don't actually know how to fly fish, but they like swinging it around their head.
Oh yeah. And the fly fishing film fest was in OKC. And so I went up there and just tried to, network and mingle. And one of the guys was like, hey, I got a few boot makers up north of town. You should come with me one day. And met them. I mean, I'm telling you, these guys, like, they are like hardcore, like ex-Cowboys. Like, they decided to stop cowboying and make like boots. Like, one of them is like a very renowned boot maker. His name's Raymond Dorwart. Great friend of mine. And one of the sweetest humans in the world. And his wait list is like 3 years long.
Wow.
His boots start at like $3,000.
Oh my goodness.
Like, this guy is like a very like well-known boot maker across the world. And he's had so many people come in and like apprentice under him. And, there's like, another lady named Lisa Sorrell, and this is in Guthrie, Oklahoma. And her boots start at like $10,000. Wow. Like, she's made boots for like Arnold Schwarzenegger, like very, political figures, musicians, you name it. It's nuts.
Sheesh.
Yeah. But anyways, going back to that, I met them. His apprentice at the time invited me out to his ranch. And ever since then, I was hooked, And I was like, man, this is like, I looked at the landscape of creative work. I was like, there's really nobody doing this. I mean, there's a few people. Like, there's nobody really like honing in this, especially in Oklahoma. So I kind of became like the face of like Western work in the state of Oklahoma. And so that's kind of how I kind of built myself up.
So, shameless plug, if you're in the Western industry as a rancher or a ranch business, we would love to work with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Eric's your guy for it. I'll just send you his Instagram, and you'll be like, oh yeah, get this guy out here, whatever it takes. So.
I thrive. I didn't even know how to ride a horse or nothing. Yeah, I kind of learned on the fly as
Can you ride a horse now?
Yeah, I can still ride.
Pretty good?
Not very good, but yeah, I can ride.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Well, a lot of the things too is like a lot of the people I met were like team ropers, and their horses are either just standing or they're like full sprint. So
Yep.
I can't learn on a horse that's just going balls to the wall, like full dead sprint.
Yeah.
I can't do it. Yeah, so give me a good one that can trot and lope, and I'm good.
Yeah,
So
the one they put 5-year-olds on. That's the one I ride typically. So
it's fun. It's so much fun.
It
yeah.
is.
But there's a few horses that I've ridden before that are a little difficult, but I've gotten used to it. Only reason I need like an easy horse is because I'm carrying camera equipment.
Sure.
Sorry, I'm carrying $5,000 on my chest.
Need a mule or a walking horse.
Yeah. Need something easy.
It's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not buying you a horse for the business yet.
It's fine.
But
it's fine.
that'd be a sweet company.
Get the right ranch, we would.
Yeah.
That is absolutely true.
Yeah. But no, it's that's kind of how I got my start. And ever since then, I've just been really just kind of doing it on the side. Really, I had a sales job at the time, and I was just kind of doing it on the weekends and every now and then, and just trying to grow my skills through that. And so it's kind of my introduction to the world of agriculture, learning about this. So my parents grew up around it, but I didn't. So this is kind of like my way of showing appreciation.
Yeah, I think most Americans are kind of like you, where they've been separated. Their family was once in it, but just as time's gone, they took a public job and got away from agriculture. But I think most everybody still has at some level connects with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. My dad grew up farming. His dad farmed, like all over the country. And then my mom's dad was a farm equipment salesman all across like Oklahoma and Texas. So he'd be gone like 5 days out of the week. Then he'd come back. And that's like the time my mom got to spend with him. But like he was an ag, but like I didn't get to grow up in that because both of their dads told him you need to find an indoor job. And that was just kind of, you don't want this lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I think I read this thing, like every American is like 3 generations removed from agriculture, something like that. And, so it's pretty cool seeing like my generation kind of embracing ag again.
Yeah, it's trendy now. I mean, that's the thing is like, I rant about it all the time. People in the farm world specifically and the ranch world too love to complain about how kids don't want to work and they don't want to do all these things. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like homesteading and gardening are like having the most massive resurgence you can imagine. And then not to mention the success of shows like Yellowstone or even just rodeo in popular culture. Like there's just so much upswing in that right now, and it's like there's people who want to be there. It's just we're doing a bad job of plugging those people in where they want to be plugged in. Because like, I mean, you're here, you discovered it, and you're now super into it. Like, I mean, this basically your personal brand is. I mean, you're wearing a King Rope Sheridan, Wyoming hat. I mean, I've seen about 1,000 of those. I think they're a little overrated.
Dude, they're the best hats. I don't know what you're talking about. They're so good.
I used to live in Montana where every boy under 14 had one. So, but anyways, I mean, yeah, we're seeing this like resurgence in it. And now it's a matter of, hey, how are we as an agriculture community we have the opportunity to either complain about the next generation or plug them in. And that's part of, I feel like our job as people who are young in this industry is like, hey, let's get these people connected back to it and keep them plugged in. So we don't end up with another, 4, 5, 6 generations removed from the farm or the ranch. Cause it's our heritage. I mean, this country was founded on farmers in the Midwest and ranchers out west. I mean, that is what like settled this country was those people. And we've just totally lost that connection. So.
Yeah. Yeah. The different styles of ranching too is really interesting. Cause like I'm sure you got ranchers out here, but it's nothing like you see out in like I got to spend some time in Nevada back in May.
Nevada's wild.
I mean, I'm talking 2 guys managing 750,000 acres.
Yep.
All on their own. And it's just like the amount of space you have out there. Like, I didn't see a soul I didn't touch pavement for like 36 hours. I mean, we were just out there and just
No man's land.
Dude, it was nuts.
Yeah, Nevada's got to be like one of the most underrated ag states in the U.S. Like I drive through Nevada pretty regularly, and that state is just like you get past Reno, and it's just nothing for the whole state. Like you will drive on a major highway and not see someone for an hour. Sometimes it's crazy.
I was near Austin, Nevada, so like the middle of like 3 hours east of Reno. So like you're in the middle of smack dab in the middle of the state. I mean, but seeing how those guys ran their operation was a lot different than seeing big outfits in Texas, or in Oklahoma or in Kansas.
How'd you get hooked up with that?
I had a project, it was like where the buckaroos roam, and I pitched it to so many brands. And I was following this gal that worked for Boot Barn, and, and I didn't realize she worked for Boot Barn, and I was like, hey, I got this project I've shown to a few companies. Nobody's bid on it yet. Like, would you guys be interested in helping me tell the story? And luckily, she grew up around buckaroos, so like that's like how she knew about them. And because a lot of Western apparel brands, they really focus on your cow punchers, kind of like Texas cowboy, your American cowboy, So, but nobody, I bet I could tell you what a buckaroo is to anybody, and they wouldn't even know what one looks like. The gear's different, apparel's different.
Well, tell our audience what it is.
So it's It derives from the Mexican vaqueros.
Yep.
And and they kind of took a lot of their traditions with them through like the Chico Basin and Nevada, California. They really live like west of Colorado. And so they kind of live within this region. Terrain is really tough. Their ropes are longer. Their hats are very like flat brim hats. They don't wear like long shotgun leggings. They wear like chinks just because it's so hot and dry. So a lot of their gear is different, the way they operate. A lot of their accessories are different too. So like in Texas, you'll see cowboys with like these tiny rowels on their spurs, but you go out to buckaroo country, these guys got these big fat rowels, and it's just, it serves a purpose. But it's really more or less tradition in a lot of like the ranching community. So, it's still scarce. It's still kind of like the scarcity mindset, but priorities are different just due to what traditions are.
Cultural differences and stuff.
Yeah, essentially. A lot more like silver in their horses' bits and in the reins. It's a lot more flashy.
Yeah, more ornate.
Yeah. It's really, really cool.
That's kind of like the Southwest culture, isn't it?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, it's neat.
Yeah, but cowboys, and you'll have a cowboy that just does day work and he just travels the country and that's what he does.
Yeah.
He doesn't know anything else. So he'll just go from ranch to ranch every other summer and, work in different places across the country.
Gosh, what's that one? Who's that song by? Day Working Cowboy. What's that song by?
I couldn't tell you.
Oh man, I'll have to show you my Old West playlist at some point. It's a good playlist.
Oh yeah.
So like, I mean, that's sweet. Like, so you're working on a project out there last May. I mean, what's been going on since then?
Man, I was stuck in this creative rut back in like 2019, and I was like, I have this idea for like a video project and just something to do, and it was everyone I've talked to, they you look at the West, everybody's got this different view of like what the West looks like. Maybe the West to them is, in the tech region in the Bay Area in California. Maybe it's national parks. Maybe it's freedom and wide open spaces. Maybe it's something else. So like everybody has this like idea of like what the West really is, and it's so popular in pop culture around the world. I guarantee if you ask anybody, in Europe or Asia, and you ask them like, what do you think about America? They probably one of the first things they say is like Indians and cowboys, And so like cowboy culture is so ingrained in like world culture too. And you see it in a lot of like fashion nowadays too. And just pop culture in general. And so I wanted to start this docuseries called My West. And it was kind of like this take on like Yeti Presents, but like nobody was really telling these stories of the West. And so I really wanted to find like cowboys, musicians, artists, craftsmen, just anybody that's living the Western lifestyle or contributing to it in some way and how they got into it. And that was really kind of like my big video break. It was like, that's how I learned a lot of like video techniques and how I kind of like built my portfolio in a way. And it was just this big passion project that I was working on. And had a few business partners that helped me out with it. And that, they really loved the idea of that project. And so we kind of took it full fold and ran with it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that's actually that's how I originally found Eric. I don't remember how. Something popped up in my feed of the My West series. I think it was it episode 1 that was construction? Which one was it?
No, it was like episode...
That might have been 2 or 3.
It's like episode...
I've watched them all.
6, I think.
Okay, episode 6. Okay, so I'm a little far behind, but I remember seeing that, and that's how I first met Eric, because I think I messaged him and said,
right.
This is
That's
sick.
right. I do
Here's
remember
my
that.
phone number. Call me. And I was mowing my lawn one day, and Eric calls me, and I sit on the lawnmower for like an hour on the phone with Eric.
I do remember that. Now, that's how we got in touch with each other originally.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you were doing like construction stuff at the time, right?
I had done a little, and we were starting to transit. No, I mean, that's originally how the business started off, was just like landscape construction. And then I was like, this actually, like, my true passion was always going to go back to farming. I was like, this is what needs to be done.
That's right. That makes sense.
And I saw him and I was like, oh, I got to talk to this guy. And then he hooked me up with this guy, Grady. Grady's up in Northeast Iowa, another phenomenal photographer who I look at and I wish we could hire him. He's awesome. But yeah, no, Eric's work is phenomenal. That's why we hired. I mean, he's just like, he shares the same vision we do, but also brings so much into the business that we don't have. Like he'll tell you too, is like, he is a learner. Like he loves to learn from other people and to push himself creatively, which is hard to find some days. And so he will tell you, like, he likes being surrounded by people who are smarter than him and are going to teach him things. And that's probably why he's been able to grow in his skill set so quickly, is because he just puts himself in the right rooms with the right people.
I try to embrace discomfort a lot, which is really tough because my personality just doesn't really call for it. I tend to find like, I just want to be comfortable, cozy and comfy at all times, but I know to like grow professionally, you have to put yourself out there and network. And I think I'm grateful for like my sales experience in that way, because like forced me to like talk to people and like get in front of people. I was always like an outgoing like kid growing up, but sales really taught me how to like, just getting, just create that relationship. And, I'm really good with relationships and meeting people, so like one of the personality tests you had me take, I was the entertainer. I just love being around people, talking to people, get very energized and like team efforts. So it's really how I like to operate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the coolest things about what is happening, with y'all's creative direction is you actually get to tell people stories, of agriculture. And so as this goes on, I think you'll see some unique perspectives that have out of agriculture that you've never seen on video before.
Oh yeah, and like that's been our major. We've had even in this past like 3 weeks, we've had multiple clients request saying like, hey, how good are you at just like telling people stories, like telling the farmer and rancher stories? Like all of a sudden in the past 3 months, like starting this year, even companies are starting to get on board and realizing, oh shoot, like this is all that actually matters when it comes to even like media, like the marketing side of things. Like at the end of the day, I've said on this podcast before, I mean, if we could go full in on YouTube, just making the videos we would want to make, like that's the route and we're still moving that way, possibly like down the road. It's like, hey, like we want to tell stories and we want to tell them really well. And right now we're actually just in cool opportunities. Like we're working on a project right now that's like literally all we're doing is telling farmers and ranchers stories. Like that is the whole project scope, is just tell the story and do it well. I mean, that's just like the whole, like that's the only requirement for this project. And Eric's taken all that over, which is going to be super awesome. Like, Eric's gifts and abilities and storytelling helps align with that's kind of the whole reason I started this, is like, we just got to tell stories. We got to get the knowledge out there, and stories are what compel people. I've said that on this podcast too, is like no fancy visuals, no great soundtrack, no pointing fingers or anything like that never compels people. The story behind everything is what compels people, and Eric is able to channel that a lot better than I can. And so that's why just having him overseeing our team now and doing that sort of stuff, it's just like already in 2 weeks, it's just like, okay, we're still figuring a heck of a lot of stuff out right now. Yeah. Eric came in and day one, he's like, hey, do you have this, and that? And I was like, I haven't even thought about writing that down once. And so it's really good that he's here, because he's forcing me to think about things that I just keep in the back of my head. But he's also taking things that I would do creatively and saying, well, actually, maybe we should do this, because this is probably the better way to do it. And I'm like, all right, you're the boss. All right, we'll do that. And it's been awesome. So.
Well, I appreciate you being open to my suggestions and just teamwork once again.
I'd be a fool if I didn't listen to you. So
the same here. So there's a lot to learn from everybody.
Yeah. So and Eric also just loving people. I think he's in a position where he's just going to get to like thrive off of like the chaos of building a team and the fun things that we're going to be able to do with that. Like
there is that bit in in that personality test of mine. It says entertainers embrace like a little bit of chaos in their day. That's like exactly like up my alley, So
just come around here for a couple days.
Dude, that's what I'm saying.
You're at the right place.
Dude, I don't know. Like I'm very structured in my day to day. Like I have a routine when it comes to like how I go about my day, but how I go about it, it's not like from 10 to 11 I'm doing this. It's like, it's like I'll get stuff done, but it's not going to be done in like a line by line matter. So it's kind of how I like to operate like my vacations too. If I like, if we go and explore a place, I'll have like a list of things I want to go see, but I'm like not going to have a full itinerary of each day and what we're going to be doing. It's like I just kind of want to find some like milestones to hit, and if I need to go across the map to do all those, it's kind of how I like to do it. So
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
yeah. I feel like if you're too buttoned up and structured and you don't get things done, then that leaves room for disappointment a lot of the time. So for me, I've realized like, because I'm pretty hard on myself just naturally. And so in order to feel a little bit better about the things that I'm doing, I allow myself like, some sort of flexibility throughout my day, so I think that kind of, and it just gives people a little bit more freedom to kind of operate their day how they feel is best for them.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think flexibility sometimes leads to opportunity too.
It does.
Oh, I mean, that's like I tell people like one of the biggest sellers for us as a business is like, hey, we're pretty flexible with you. Like we understand that the chaos of farming and ranching is not consistent at all. Like one day of rain can ruin a week, and we just have to be able to roll. We have to be willing to roll with those punches. Like because I used to be as stiff as a board, I would not be able to handle stuff like that, and I'm the same way. I've kind of just like leaned into the chaos. I'm like, this is okay.
Yeah.
This is my life, and we're gonna have to figure it out because I don't have an option. And being okay with that, just be like, all right, well, there's always another day.
Yeah.
So you're fitting right in already.
I love one of the things I wanted to bring up too is like the movies that I like to watch. So like two of my favorite movies, it's No Country for Old Men and it's Sicario. Like those two movies are in my top 3.
No Country for Old Men creeps me out.
It's an amazing movie. And I think the reason I like it is just because there is a little bit of chaos. It doesn't follow your typical movie storyline, happy ending. It's like at the end, if you've seen the movie Sicario, you think that it's this storyline, but then you get like, 3/4 of the way through it, and it's like, oh, it's not about this person at all. It's about this character who came in as a side character. And at the end of the movie, you realized you just watched like 3 different storylines in one movie.
And it flips it all upside down.
It's
wild.
It's wild. And No Country for Old Men, I'm going to spoil it. The main character gets killed. Like if you haven't seen it, like it's been out since 2007. I'm sorry.
Not gonna lie, I actually got about 3/4 of the way through it, and I just turned it off. So
Dude,
Couldn't manage it.
it's creepy.
It's not what's creepy about it though, like
The one gas station scene, I got to that scene.
Where he walked in and cattle punched that guy.
So tense. Like just sitting there, just like for that like 3 minutes, knowing it's coming, and just sitting there knowing it's coming was just like, it's great storytelling. Don't get me wrong. It's like the episode of The Office dinner party, where they're all having the dinner party. It's like that level of tension, except someone dies. So
Is that Quentin Tarantino? Is it?
no, it's Coen Brothers.
Okay, I got you.
They
Matrix.
they did it. Scientists did a study of the antagonist in that movie, and they said that's the most accurate representation of like a psychopath.
Really?
In like movie history. Like the way Anton Chigurh is depicted, like that is like what a real life psychopath would act and look like.
Has no feelings, morality.
Essentially, yeah. There's no moral compass.
He did a fantastic job of selling his character.
Oh my God, he's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I'm kind of like Clayton there. I still remember that guy's face.
Yeah.
oh my God, what a beautiful
his
movie.
emotionless.
Well, I moved from Oregon to Oklahoma, which is a pretty drastic landscape change. And when I moved back, I was like, this place sucks. Like I don't have mountains to look at. Everything's brown. It's just it's ugly. There's no ocean. There's nothing. And it wasn't until I watched No Country for Old Men and you look at that movie, there's nothing out there in West Texas. But it's like one of the best movies of all time. It's like, how did they make that place look beautiful? And I was like, man, what if I could do the same for like Oklahoma, And so that was really like a big inspiration to like appreciate like the landscape I was in,
I was telling Eric yesterday when we were riding over here, I hadn't got to see a lot of his work, but I have seen some of it. And, like when you're looking at his work, I can feel the grittiness of the work. You know, like
You can feel the dirt blown in Oklahoma.
I do.
blowing into your skin.
You know, that was the thing that when Clayton, said, "Hey, I've got the guy," and I was looking at it, I texted him back. I was like, "Man, that's some gritty work." Like I felt like I was in those situations,
Yeah.
And to me, I mean, what better way to tell a story than visually and to go along with, with really well spoken words or whatever, but visual.
Yeah.
It's so easy to like feel what those guys are experiencing or like
Man,
the warmth
yeah.
of the campfire or whatever.
Yeah.
Man, it's everybody's got a story to tell, right? And I feel I've never really was into like fashion photography or studio photography. It can be very manipulative in a way into like where you're trying to manipulate the light. And I get that makes you a quote unquote better photographer. It's because you're learning how to control light. But working in a natural landscape, like for me, longest time I battled like, oh, that's not art. I'm just out there capturing. But if you can capture a beautiful image in that one moment, that's a snapshot of like a moment in somebody's life.
Yeah.
And like that moment won't ever be repeated again.
Well, you brought it up last night.
Yeah.
Like some of Times Magazine's best photos ever are the ones that are dirty, out of focus,
Yeah.
and aren't very like there's no gloss to it. It is just raw and real, and those are the ones that reach tens of millions of people in magazines.
Yeah, and I think it's a case of like I think what a lot of brands are trying to shift to nowadays. It's like authenticity.
I was just about to bring that up.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
more than ever, the gloss, especially in a world like social media, like the gloss, everyone's just so sick of it. Like
Yeah.
it's just like. Or like same thing. Conversations with our clients right now are not like, oh, can you make this perfectly polished video? It's like, can you just be authentic and like just make us seem like normal people? And I was like, yeah, it's actually way easier than glossing everything up.
Well, that's where it all leads to. It's like a lot of my cowboy friends I talk to. They're like, we don't relate to some of these brands because they don't use people that have ever ridden a horse or that that know how to tie a rope or whatever. And it's like they don't feel represented at all.
Right. They don't have the crow's feet and the weathered looking skin like the
It's
cowboy
like,
would actually have.
Yeah, it's like you're selling this lifestyle, but you're not selling us.
Yeah.
We're your main customers, and it's like kind of like we were talking yesterday. There's a lot of brands that are starting to shift and show that authenticity of who their clients are and who their clients want to be too. And without showing that like genuine side, you're not going to touch anybody. And so I think, like you said, it's like kind of like this whole polished look to social media kind of gives people like a false hope of like what their lives should be like. But really in reality, like today, just sitting in the shop, just
Grinding it out.
grinding and pounding on things, and
Yeah.
it's like that's what farm work is sometimes.
Yeah,
It's not you're not in the field all the time. You're not you're not talking to the camera a lot on these episodes. There's a lot of times you're just trying to sand something down.
Oh, yeah.
That's
We've strung harvest out for 4 months, but we've been sitting in here beating and pounding and cutting and
Yeah.
hauling corn, anything that is the least amount of fun in agriculture.
It's hard to make a 30-minute video on stuff like that, but it's like, it happens every day.
Yeah.
It's stuff that is so, and it's the same way with like, we're going to go work with a ranch out in Wyoming later this year, and it's going to be during branding, which is a super fun time of year. But it's like, it isn't shown the 2 weeks of gathering cattle out in the hills, which is about fun for about a day. And then you're like, oh, shoot, I've been on a horse for a week and I'm exhausted. Like that's sort of like living out west. I mean, everyone loves the idea of moving cows until it's like, oh, well, it's a week worth of moving cows,
Yeah.
I was just,
And you get them down in the, like my buddy would chit hole, like where they're trapped down in there, and you got to try to rope them out or drag them out or what, use any means. Of course, there's going to be one where you don't want him, and there's going to be some that don't participate or don't want to participate.
Oh yeah, well I was down in Kansas with a buddy, and they've got a couple thousand head. I mean, they do cow calf all the way up to their own lot, and he's like, I I love working cattle personally. He's like, oh, well, come work cattle with us for a week and a half straight because that's how long it takes us to process a couple thousand cows. He's like, you'll be real sick of it in about an hour and a half. And I was like, you're probably right, Andy.
Yeah.
But anyways, like, yeah, like, I mean, it'll be interesting to see in the next, what's the next stage after this trend in marketing, quote unquote. Like, I'm getting all marketing on you guys, listening to this podcast, but it's like currently the trend is moving towards authenticity and really gritty, real stories. Like, I'll be really curious to see what their next stage is, because we've been in the corporate glossy age for about a decade now, and everyone's just kind of sick of it. They're sick of being sold to. So I'll be interested to see where it goes next. But
I think the thing that made like shows like Yellowstone really successful is because I mean, you also, obviously you need actors to act, but they brought in like real cowboys to do stuff.
Yeah.
They train like real horses. Like Taylor Sheridan has bought a ton of cutting horses for the show. Like those are stuff like he bought for the 4-6's ranch. Like those are his horses. It's not some stunt trained Hollywood horses. It's like real, it's stuff that, horses that cowboys would really use.
Sure.
And it's gear that cowboys would really use.
Yeah.
And it's like that. And the funny thing is too, it's golf is kind of having this identity crisis too, because you got all these brands that are producing all this golf apparel, but then you see a lot of their marketing. It's like, you guys don't know what you're doing, and the people that are actually going to care and that actually care about golf are the ones that are going to sniff them out.
yeah.
And it's like, if you're not authentic, like you're getting left behind.
Yeah.
And if you're just trying to push out a product, in the apparel space just because it's trendy,
Yeah.
but you don't know anything about that sport, you're not gonna have a good time.
We've talked about that a lot, because I've got basically half an apparel line design right now, and it was one of those things like we'll do something like that at some point, but that market has like everyone you can think of has said, oh, I can slap a logo on this thing and ship it overseas and start selling it for $50-$60, and it's just like we're at peak. Like that market is just so oversaturated and people are so tired of it. It's like every other day I get some new ag or Western brand trying to sell me a $30 t-shirt, and I was like, that t-shirt costs $5. Who are you kidding? And we're at that peak of like, all right, everyone's sick of it. Who's going to survive, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure you see, like, I'm sure the Western industry is still riding that peak right now, but I know it's coming. I know there's going to come a point where we're going to see this little dip off, and people are like, oh, well, our cash cow's milked entirely, so we'll see what happens after that. But,
Yeah, a lot of people wearing backwards cowboy hats and wearing
That's why like literally like I have to fly out to Nashville with you on Friday, and I'm just like, every time I drive through that city, I'm like, this city represents the part of cowboy culture I can't stand.
Yeah.
The people who have like, oh, if you got manure on your cowboy boots, you would throw a fit.
That's also another thing that my wife told me about. I was like, I feel like I'm having a hard time trying to do Western in Oklahoma, and she's like, well, Oklahoma's not Western, it's country. That's kind of how Nashville is. It's not.
I like that.
It's not cowboy. It's country, and so there is going to be some overlap there, And so that's where I've gotten an appreciation for the South in a way, in Southern culture. It's like, yeah, it kind of picks up some stuff from Western culture, but it's not exactly it.
No.
I mean, go to Mississippi and look at any freaking redneck. What are they wearing? They're wearing snakeskin boots, tight Levi's, and they're going to go watch NASCAR on the weekends, but that's the culture, Western culture, you're going to see a bit more, authenticity there. So,
Here in Kentucky, you won't really see many cowboy hats, but if you dip across the state line into Tennessee, the very western part of Tennessee has the cowboy hat, that is, it's not a predominant cultural thing there, but there is a few cowboy hats, and it's more country with a little bit of that western flair. Rodeo's popular there. There's a couple counties in Kentucky where rodeo's popular, but we're more of a, especially if you get east of the Tennessee and Cumberland Rivers, more of a Midwestern style state versus the kind of the area we're in here. I guess would almost be like a southern state here in far western tip of Kentucky.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like you drive to Illinois and everyone's speaking a different accent, but it's wild the difference between.
Yeah, just crossing the river here, you go from the northern accent to the here in my geography, almost a deep south accent. You know?
Yeah. Again, I ask that question a lot. Everybody's like, well, is Oklahoma the South? I always say no, because it's like 5 or 6 different regions in one state. And because if you actually look at the geography, so Oklahoma, I think, is either like the first or second country in it's the first or second state in the country with like the most like terrain or whatever, like the most ecosystems. Because if you go into southeastern Oklahoma, you're getting into the Ozark Mountains. You're also getting into a little bit of swampland a little bit. And then if you go north of there into the northeast part of the state, you have big, lush, green, rolling hills. And you go more toward the center of the state, you have a lot of great plains, a lot of flat land, a lot of prairie land. And if you go out toward the southwestern part of the state, it's very dry, very flat. And then you go out to the very corner of the Panhandle, and a little bit of the Rocky Mountains at the foothills is like in the state of Oklahoma. And so it's like, you could drive 4 hours and be in the same state, but the terrain is completely changed.
Yeah, just totally diverse.
Totally. I mean, because you can go from the northwest part of the state to the southeast part of the state, and it's 2 totally different terrains, but you're still in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's really not the South, but it's not the West, but it's not the Midwest, It's kind of the Great Plains, but it's kind of not. So it's really like a mutt of a state.
And if I recall properly, I mean, it was one of the later states to be founded, because for a long time, at least in my Old West histories, that was no man's land. That was the land that you didn't cross over.
Yeah.
It was still Indian territory, and it was a place that, like, hey, you gotta have, if you're coming from Texas to Montana, you have to go through, but you don't want to spend a long time there.
Yeah, it's the divisiveness of like the Native Americans there. It's been a kind of a big topic for over a century.
Yeah,
and so they've recently just kind of claimed like over half the state is now Indian territory. So, and a lot of the very successful tribes, business-wise, are in the state of Oklahoma.
Yep.
And so it's a really cool thing to see. So, like the Chickasaw tribe is one of the biggest. The Cherokee tribe, Osage Nation is huge. I mean, Choctaw Nation, Native American culture is very, very prominent in the state of Oklahoma. And, I mean, I can't really speak on it because it was, but the land rush essentially was just like, hey, this is a state. We'll give you whatever land you can take. And so it's still a controversial decision, but, I can't really change that. So,
yeah. That's a whole, that's something that, you don't see as much in Iowa, but when I was in Montana, it was the same way. Like, a large portion of that state was Native American territory. And like, I used to work with some kids from the reservations, and what's happened to them over the decades is pretty wild. Like, did you ever watch Wind River?
I did, yeah.
Have you seen Wind River?
I haven't.
Man,
you gotta watch. It is
rough
one of it's by Taylor Sheridan too, the guy who made Yellowstone, but this is pre-Yellowstone. It's one of those movies that you'll leave watching, like your jaw will just be dropped. Like, I can't, having lived in that area for a while, like I was probably only about 3 hours from Wind River. Having lived in that area, it's brutal. I mean, it is absolutely brutal.
The Trail of Tears came right through here, and like they forced them across the river at Thieves, and it's kind of over by, if you're not familiar with this area, it's Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and if you're not familiar with the Mississippi River, it's a brutal river, and I've lived on it my whole life. I mean, I respect it. I've been out on it. I know, only the best of the best swimmers would be able to accomplish swimming the river, just because the current's so strong. There's debris in it. There's eddies that'll just pull you under. And Thebes, if you're not familiar with the river here, is one of the very worst sections of it. Like, the limestone bluffs force the river down in a bend to where it becomes very, it's difficult for boats to navigate there. And they force, the Indians across it there. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if it's even documented how many men and women and children died there, but
I mean, I think
It's unbelievable. I mean, can you imagine doing that as a man or as a person forcing?
yeah. I mean, it's wild. Think about the actual like phrase, like Trail of Tears.
Yeah.
Like, dude, that's like, we say it. It's just a word at this point, but you actually like break the word down. Like, man, that's just.
I go through there and it gives me goosebumps.
Yeah,
Because I know how brutal that river is, and I drive through the area, and I know they went across right there, and I just can't put myself in that.
Yeah.
I mean, it gives me goosebumps every time I drive through there, and I drive through there pretty often.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
The state of Oklahoma is like super diverse in terms of like ethnicities and stuff. So Oklahoma also has a lot of like I don't know if it's still there are still a few, but there's like a lot of black towns in the state of Oklahoma. So like Oklahoma is almost known as like a black state in a way, and so learning about that culture has been really cool because I've been to a lot of like black rodeos and I've really gotten to learn more about like the black cowboy culture. And right now in pop culture, black cowboys are kind of like this thing that people are learning about just now, finding out about. And it's so cool because these guys are in my backyard.
Oh, yeah.
I can call one of them up today and say, "Hey, can I come out next week?" And they're like, "Yeah, come out."
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see the culture that they've been able to preserve. And it's also cool to see the what would be called they're just being showed some love.
Yeah.
And
Well,
culture
and
to
that's one of those things that history is widely glossed over. But even then, I've been reading this book that was written from the true accounts of someone, and in multiple chapters, it's like, yep, this old guy used to be a slave, and he was a cowboy out west. Because for a lot of African American black slaves, the West was a new opportunity to be whoever you wanted. And cowboy culture, especially, at least from what I've studied, was a place that a lot of them, there was racism. It happened. It still happens today. But it was one of those places where it's like, oh, like, you can do what you want out here, and you can live on the trail and be your own person. And like, there's so much history there that is yet to be like really dug into. And I think that's super fascinating.
I do too. There's so many undertold stories of different cultures in America that are just fascinating when you get to see parts of them and histories and like how their culture still exists today. Even though it's they may be very small populations, they still have like a very just fantastic story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's one of my favorite parts about the U.S. I mean, still in general, I mean, despite all our problems, I mean, like, I see a lot of this country. I travel. I'm going to be in probably 30, 35 states this year. Every single place I stop, every single place I travel is different. There are different things that formed that area into what it is. There's different people, like accents, backstories, things like that. It's just like, it just goes so deep because this country is so big and there's so many people who helped make this country what it is. As like, I've spent maybe 3 hours of my life driving through Oklahoma on my way to Texas, and I would have no idea unless I spent months or years there learning those stories. Like, it's just.
I've taken a big interest in learning about Europe in the past few years. And a lot of the comments I hear is like, or read, it's like, oh, well, people don't understand how big America is. And I never really thought about that too. But if you really think about like the U.S. is bigger than almost the entirety of Europe. But the thing is like in Europe, you can cross, you can drive 10 miles and be in a completely different country that speaks a different language. The fact is here, you can cross a state line and it's almost like 50 different countries that speak the same language. There's similar cultures in terms of, corporate America, but
McDonald's.
yeah, essentially. But every state has its own culture.
Sure.
Even from Iowa to Nebraska, there's probably a different culture there.
Oh yeah, Nebraskans suck.
Yeah.
Sorry, Nebraskans.
Different things to see.
We don't have to water our corn.
Just even in Kentucky, if you just cross that boundary of the Tennessee Cumberland River, our culture totally changes. Accents change, and then it changes again. You get over to Appalachia,
Yeah.
It's like three totally different cultures in the same state.
Yeah.
Man, look how nuanced we all sound talking about culture and society in Europe. Wow. So we're sitting in the middle of Barlow, Kentucky.
I know, right? I kind of view myself as very like open, like an open book. And I I've realized before this podcast, I was actually thinking about this. I was like, why am I the way that I am? Why do I like exploring new things?
Portland.
Yeah, not even that. But it's like, dude, like if I wasn't such an open book about things, I wouldn't find as much joy in my life. It's because I took a curiosity to this topic or, whatever this is. And I did some research and I learned a bit more about it. And it's like, it's a part of my daily life. And it brings me so much joy. It's like everything that you don't know is out there to be explored. And everything that you don't know is also a chance for you to find some sort of happiness in your life. And I've started kind of viewing like new things out in the world that I don't know about as like that opportunity. And if it wasn't for me, if I was like closed off and like very like, oh, I don't care about that, I don't need to care about it, I feel like I wouldn't really find as much joy in life, So
For sure, it's a great way to look at it.
Oh, dude, it's awesome. I mean, I've found so many different foods and cuisines just from
Oh man,
being curious.
One of the first things Eric said when I said, "Hey, you want to travel?" He's like, "As long as I get to eat good local cuisine while I'm here." First thing Neil does when he picks him up from the airport, straight to McDonald's.
Hey, gotta try the local cuisine, right?
With that said, he did cook me some pretty good pasta last night. So.
And we had what we had.
And today he had a genuine, local, authentic La Center burger. So I'm sure it was great.
So there's this burger scholar I've learned about.
That's a word I didn't know existed.
His name's George Motes. This guy has written books about burgers. Like he's traveled the country trying different burgers. Like he knows like burgers by like micro regions in the U.S. And so he has a lot of knowledge on the topic. But he says the burger belt is from Texas to Wisconsin, and that makes Oklahoma the buckle. And he his love for the Oklahoma onion burger is so unmatched. Like it's actually like a thing in pop culture now. You can Google Oklahoma onion burger, and almost every like burger joint in the country is like trying to replicate it because it's getting that popular. It's
Really?
just so good. Yeah.
Really?
And so like
Is it ground into the beef?
Yeah, so back during the Great Depression, cooks had to find a way to extend their meat supply, and so they added onions, and onions were super cheap at the time. So they thinly sliced them, they pressed them into the burger, they made the balls, the ground beef into balls, and then they smashed it on the grill. Then they put the onions on there and smashed them into the burger, and so the juices kind of cook into the burger, and
Caramelizes the onion, kind of.
caramelizes it, chars it a little bit.
Yeah.
Man, just some mustard and pickles. That's all you need. Honestly, with a little bit of cheese.
I'm coming to Oklahoma. A
Dude.
good burger is the thing that
I can take you
live
to
for.
I can take you to 10 different burger spots around Oklahoma City, and they'll all be like unique in their own way of how they make it. Yeah, the Oklahoma onion burger is like the quintessential burger in my eyes.
We might eventually give Eric his own cooking show on the Denton Farms YouTube
Dude.
channel because he just loves to cook.
I'm passionate about food, man. It's good stuff.
That's one of our. That's one of the things where we hope to be able to do at some point. So
Yeah.
be the perfect host for that.
Oh man, it'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love learning about different cuisines and foods and cooking techniques. So I don't know. Well, I have this like the thing is, I like to cook, but like I have this like effort to reward ratio when it comes to food. Like if it takes too long and it has all this, it's like it's not worth the effort, So I try to find some sort of like low effort, good food. I mean, because I cook all the time. I'm not going to spend 3 hours in the kitchen every single day,
Yeah.
So it's like if I can find something that's good, doesn't take a lot of effort, like that's my style of cooking. So,
Yeah.
Like smoking a brisket. Sorry, I'm not spending 20 hours on that thing.
Well, that's the difference between you and me. I'll
No.
smoke a brisket for 20 hours.
Dude, and then it's gone in like 5 minutes. It's like, dude, I just spent.
You're not smoking big enough briskets.
Like, dude, I just like,
You had to spend a whole day.
not worth it at all. Yeah, maybe like once a year on a brisket, but
Have you ever tried a smoked burger before? You like half smoked and half grilled. The best burger in America I've ever had was in Kansas. Well, not from a guy who lived in Kansas.
you'll have to come to Oklahoma, get you a.
I don't know.
An onion burger.
I don't
Oh,
know,
yeah.
dude. This burger was that good.
We'll see.
I think right here in our geography we got Freight House and So Sarah Bradley Martin owns it, and she's been on that Top Chef. I think actually, I don't know if she won it, but she got maybe runner up a couple of different times. And just a phenomenal chef, and her burger is amazing.
It's called the Freight Burger.
I don't know if she has a special name for it, but she always puts something unique on it, like an egg or jelly, or it's something different. She changes her menu all the time. She always has a burger on there, and she always adds something unique to it.
I'm very opinionated when it comes to like my toppings and condiments and stuff. I mean, there's every now and then is fine,
Yeah.
but it's like if you're adding all these like peanut butters and jellies on burgers, it's like it's not about
Tarnishing
It's not about the burger at
Yeah.
that point. It's like what are you trying to hide? It's like if it's a good burger, you really don't need that
That's
much.
probably true.
That's
Like
absolutely true.
if it's amazing beef,
Yeah.
it speaks for itself.
The best burger I had, I asked the guy. I was actually just with him last week, and I was like, "Hey, how did you make that burger?" And he said, "It's all about the meat."
It is. I mean, it's the same with pizza.
Sure.
You get all these toppings on it. It's like you care about toppings, not pizza.
Yeah.
And also, it's like,
That's where I disagree. A
No.
good pizza has good meat on it.
well, no, that's fine. So like,
Is
to
that
me,
not a topping?
I think like one topping max on pizza. Like whether
So
it's
it'd be like pepperoni or sausage, but not
pepperoni,
both.
sausage. It's got to be
hamburger.
or extra cheese. I'm not joking. Like it's like if
But
it's
just one.
if it's a good pizza, like you don't need chicken and red onions and barbecue sauce and this and that. It's like you don't need all
No,
that.
I
Like,
agree with that.
Yeah, it's like you care about the toppings,
Right.
not the pizza.
Yeah, I'll go for that.
So yeah, it's the same thing. Barbecue. Why would you put sauce on barbecue? What are you trying to hide?
You can go. This is funny. So Southeast Missouri has amazing barbecue, and Western Kentucky's got good barbecue too. But if you go over to Western Missouri, they put coleslaw on it,
Yeah.
and I'm like, you just ruined a good barbecue sandwich with coleslaw.
I will say like good like coleslaw and like a barbecue sandwich is pretty good. Every now and then, like
Yeah, I mean,
toppings
I'll eat them
yeah.
separately, and I sometimes will eat some on it, but always traditionally here, it's just been barbecue. And if you ordered a side of coleslaw, they didn't actually put the coleslaw on the sandwich. So
Yeah. But I got a lot of food opinions, so you'll learn about that as we go.
I've just got a lot of opinions in general, so this will go well.
Same.
very opinionated group.
So, so what is one thing that you want to do with your time with us in the future in this, in Atlas Media Solutions with Denton Farms? Like, what is like a project you would want to make happen? Neil and I are both here, and we both agree the sky's kind of the limit. So you can literally say whatever you want, as long as it doesn't cost $1 million.
I think if for one project, man, that's tough.
It could be multiple projects, a series, like a,
Yeah. Yeah.
I just want some public record.
I don't know that answer yet. I don't think I've gotten to fully explore the full scope of the projects that we have at the moment.
Yeah.
So it's like
That would be understandable.
I would like to ask me in a year, and I think I could have a better
Got it.
understanding of that question. But I think for me, in terms of just projects, I think if you can just tell a good story and tell it in a very cinematic way, I don't think you can beat that at all.
Yeah.
The world needs more stories always.
Amen to
So
that.
yeah, but yeah, probably no answer to that, unfortunately.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Right now, we're very heavily situated in the Eastern ag scene,
Yeah.
but we hope to branch out into the Western ag scene. And I mean, that's what I really want to see somebody jump on board with us out of the Western ag.
Yeah. we this is something that's one of our weak spots is our mission statement is to serve ag, broader word, agriculture, and for us that's traditionally been grain stuff. I mean, it's funny because let's say we have someone hired in Dallas, we have someone hired in Oklahoma, we have someone hired in Utah, and somehow I'm still the one in the Midwest working with companies within 5-6 hours of us, which is just hilarious. But we want to see a more unified umbrella within this industry, because traditionally the farmer and the cowboy have not been fans. Like I'm literally reading books from like 40 years ago where it's still like they just are mad at each other. And I'm like, okay, guys, listen. All of society has no idea where their food comes from. They like the idea of the Cowboys. They don't actually like you put them on a ranch, they're just not gonna like actually understand it. And so from my standpoint, I'm like, okay, one of our overarching goals over the next few years is to I don't even want to create a division. For a long time we thought about creating like a Western division. I was like, why am I thinking that way? Like, no, we want to have a unified umbrella where agriculture as a whole can be spotlighted. This project we're working on in 2025, which I think we should have Callie on at some point too. That would be fun. But this project we're working on for 2025 is going to hopefully be like the first step into like, hey, it was originally 50 ranches, but now it's going to be 50 farms and ranches, all highlighting a specific topic. And so I think for me, having people like Eric on, it's like, hey, you're going to help us do that. We're going to dip our toes in and learn, and we're going to figure some stuff out. But overarching, we want to see the U.S. as a whole, and honestly the world as a whole, understand a little bit more about, hey, here's how your food system works. Here's where your food comes from. And more importantly, I've always been passionate about this. These are the people behind it, making it happen. Because I don't want to watch a documentary on a cow or a fruit or vegetable. I want to watch a documentary about people, and hear their stories and hear what's going on.
I guess now that I think about it, I mean, like you said, like ag is this umbrella, right? And there's so many different sectors in ag. Mm-hmm. And I think if I had to actually think of like a project I'd like to film, I'd like to explore like the Northwest a little bit more, specifically like fish farming in a way. I mean, in essential, if you think about it, I mean, it's technically ag in a way as well.
Mm-hmm.
You're still
that you're saying that, because I've definitely been looking for some fish hatcheries to work with.
Because you're still providing the country or your region with some sort of food, right? But you're not having to. I think there's regulations in terms of like wild caught salmon, and so it's like, how do salmon farmers like monitor? How do you farm fish?
Yeah,
just that whole concept. I learned about caviar a few weeks ago and how that's how that whole system operates. They farm sturgeon. You know how big sturgeon are?
Yeah, those things are humongous.
I mean, you can't get caviar from them for like 15 years. So it's like it's really a long game. If you want to, like, you can't even really.
It's like raising trees.
Yeah, right.
Which isn't technically agriculture too.
Sure. Yeah. There's a huge industry in agriculture.
The umbrella of ag in general, we don't realize how dependent we are. Like, we live in the fossil fuel age where everyone's like oil, which, mind you, plastic isn't everything. And everyone who thinks we're getting rid of oil, it's like, well, plastic isn't everything. That's a side note. Agriculture as a whole is, we as humanity are so dependent on so many different aspects of it that we forget about. Like the amount, like even the byproducts of like a cow that end up in so many other things are things that like I didn't know until I started farming. I was like, oh wait, you're telling me they do this with that and they do this with that? Like every part of an animal is used. When it comes to cows, like fish is something that's like we don't think of farming, but it's like it's food, it's ag. I love me some good sushi, and the fact that I've never even thought about the people who are doing that work as part of agriculture is mind blowing.
Because I guess there's like, especially in sushi, there's regular fish, but then there's sushi grade, like salmon, and the difference in that, I think it's like they flash freeze it. I don't really know the whole, but there's like different grades to like salmon and what they're used for. Fish oil pills, and it just like one of my biggest things I wanted to do when I was making that My West series. Like I wanted to go tell the story of like an Alaskan crab fisherman. Because guess what? That's just as much of Western culture as like a cowboy in Nebraska. But it's still within the Western United States.
So when I got to go to Alaska, all the way to Kotzebue, it's been 2 years ago now, and that culture is unbelievable that they can survive in that harsh environment.
Yeah,
I mean, those guys they're built different up there. That's the wildest region. It's unexplainable.
Yeah, I mean, Alaska's the last frontier or something.
That's
like
the
that?
truth
too.
too.
Yeah. It's absolutely gorgeous out there. But that's the thing. Why do people live out in these places? Why do they choose to, farm salmon? Why do they choose to provide the country with this product?
Right.
It's like those are the stories I want to tell.
Yeah.
You know,
Who was it that was telling me there's a greenhouse? Was it you who was telling me there's like a greenhouse farm like in the Arctic Circle of Alaska because it's over like a geothermal like vein and they're able to use
A
that
vent
to,
or whatever.
yeah,
don't
they're
think you
able
told
to
me about
create
that.
like raise produce in Alaska year round in a greenhouse because it's like Alaska where it's like dark and miserable. Like
There's
half the year.
agriculture there too, though.
And that's what I'm saying. It's like those are things that like fit under the umbrella that no one's really bothered trying to tell the story of.
well, like we were talking about yesterday, like talking about orchards.
Yep.
Man, like, dude, I feel like the story of the farmer has really just has been like the spotlight has been put on your like big grain farming, right? But
Yeah.
like, man, I want to learn more about heritage corn. I want to
Sure.
learn more about orchards. I want to learn more about like other produce. I can't even tell you where cabbage comes from or how it's farmed. It's like, but I don't think there's anybody telling the stories of those kind of farmers.
No, there's not.
Yeah,
And-
it's like,
But that's what we're looking to do, isn't it?
right.
Yeah.
And it's like, but I think just telling stories like that, I think just really gives people more of, an incentive to either start doing it on their own
Yeah.
or start purchasing locally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean,
I mean-
because for me, I go to the grocery store, I see green leaf lettuce all wrapped up in plastic, and I don't think twice about where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Like, guess what? Like, man, if I could learn more about like my local farmers and what they're doing, like if I go to the farmer's market, I don't know if anybody's selling green leaf lettuce,
It's so cool that you're talking about all this stuff because
Yeah.
Neil and I have been talking for a long. If any of you listening thinking we're gonna run out of ideas to make videos about, like the only reason we make a lot of tractor videos now is because it's within our capability. Like the sky is literally the limit. Like we want to do it all.
Yeah.
We don't know
just-
how we're gonna do it.
No, we just need we need more individuals, businesses, and ranches and farms to work with us. I mean,
Yeah.
we have a pretty big customer base now, but it's expanding. We're always looking to add others, and the more people that jump on board with us, the more stories we can share about their unique industry within agriculture.
And if you, like seriously, like this is an actual like plug for the YouTube channel. Like share this YouTube channel with people. Like I know you guys don't. It's probably hard to see. We do make like some money off of YouTube. Like, and Neil and I have agreed like all this money from YouTube is going straight back into the channel to say like, oh, we want to buy flights for Eric to fly to Alaska for a week. Well, the YouTube channel can allow him to go do that. Like we're working towards that goal where it's like, hey, rather than having to pay out of pocket. Well, the more people who are watching this, the more cool videos we get to make. And the more cool videos you get to watch, and the more food Eric gets to cook, and the more places he gets to travel.
I was gonna say like one brand in particular. You guys know Tillamook cheddar.
Oh
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
So I took my wife there in October to Oregon, and we were on the coast, and I was like, let's go to Tillamook. It's like an hour drive, and like the fact that a national brand is in this tiny community on the Oregon coast, and they work with all the local farmers, like seeing how I'd love to explore that relationship, and seeing how like they employ the community,
Yeah.
how they've gotten this big brand to turn into like what it is now, and they have this huge factory there on the coast. And it's like, dude, I want to talk to a dairy farmer and someone from Tillamook and like, how do you manage that relationship? And also, how did Tillamook become this national brand that everybody knows about now?
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. Like, we travel to Florida a couple times usually during the winter, and you can go into any of their groceries down there, the Publix or whatever, and buy Tillamook stuff. You know? And can you get to totally different geographies in that? You know?
I mean, it's like an hour and a half drive from Portland. I mean, it's absolutely wild.
Total opposite sides of the country.
Yeah, because you fly into Portland, you can drive west an hour and a half and you can see the Pacific Ocean, or you can drive an hour and a half east and you can see farmland. I mean, but there's farmland in the gorge.
Yep.
And there's farmland. That people don't think. They think Oregon. All you think is Portland, but dude, go east. Man, I'm talking wheat fields as far as the eye can see. I mean, the ag scene out west is out of this world. Vineyards, are in abundance. I want to talk to a winery and talk about farming in terms of like how vineyards operate. You know, that's also some sort of farming.
Sure.
So it's like there's so many parts in food culture that are being left unexplored.
Yep. Well,
So, yeah.
between you
So
and, a company like our farms, really, the reason Neil and I will talk about direct to consumer and our farms so much is because like this world is full of food. And, as much as we also talk about how industrialized farming has allowed us to feed a lot of people really cheaply, like we love supporting local. Like we're not like, oh yeah, like go buy the processed food from the store every time. I'm like, no, like go to a farmer's market. I love shopping at a farmer's market. We had some people over for dinner last week, and the gal, she sells quarters and halves of beef. So we left. We're like, all right, we're calling you. We're going to buy some beef from you, and we're going to stick it in our freezer because we love that we know you, and it's awesome that we get to support stuff like this. Like I support stuff like that. Like I want, I talk about it all the time. I want to be able to buy. I want to buy local pork from people. I'd love to buy local chicken from people. I love to buy beef. I want bison. I want to buy bison real bad. So
I think that's the fantastic thing about a company like our farms. Once they get off the ground, and they have a big network of farmers that are selling direct to consumer, you can be anywhere in the country at that point and order from a farm that all the way across the country from you. And get their niche produce or their niche piece of meat direct to your door, and it's coming from a farmer that the story behind, and that's been raised and or grown, in an ethical way. So.
yeah, I mean, say what you want about like some of the big grocery store chains like Whole Foods or whatever. But I mean, if you actually look at some of their SKUs, like they are buying directly from like local brands, local farmers,
Yeah.
everything. Now, it's not to say it's the whole store's not that. I go to my local Whole Foods and I can see like they're buying meat from this local farm in
Sure,
Kansas.
yeah.
It's like that's the representation I want to see in my grocery store.
Yeah.
I'd almost like to see a grocery store chain that, it varies by region. If you go to this grocery store chain in Oklahoma, you're going to get Oklahoma produce and meat. Or if you go to one in Kentucky, you're going to see a completely different set of SKUs.
Yeah.
Because this is all grown locally.
Sure.
I kind of want to see like a chain that represents like that local region in a way. That would almost be kind of a cool, store to go to.
It would be.
So.
Well, Neil and I have talked about that a lot too. I mean,
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Because we love that. I would love, one of my goals also of this business, it's not in our mission statement or on our website or anything, but I would love for a part of this to hopefully be able to help breathe life back into rural communities and help revitalize some of these small towns that historically for the past 5 decades, we've had people leaving these towns to go to the city to get a desk job. I would love to see a resurgence in rural culture as well, where we have people, hey, like I actually want to be a part of this food movement to buying local groceries. And it starts with the consumer buying more food, but eventually looks like, hey, like maybe we can scale back on the industrial side of agriculture because we have more labor available to do more complex crops. I mean, Neil's talked about it on here before. It's a lot of work to manage a garden. It takes a lot of manpower to do that, and to do that at scale, we need more people back in this industry. And it's not going to happen from building more complicated machines. It's going to come from a cultural resurgence of wanting to be invested in their food system. And
Yeah,
I think I see it coming.
I totally agree. Ultimately, like for us to change as a culture, everybody's got to get invested in wanting high quality food, high quality produce, and willing to spend a bigger portion of their budget on it. Because ultimately, I can grow, wheat a lot cheaper than we can grow cabbage or you name the type of. I'm not going to go through all the vegetables, but every one of them's labor intensive.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and I mean, when I sent Neil and someone else this the other day, when Gary Vee, who is a historic trend predictor and media aficionado, when he says the next trend in the next 10 years is going to be super high quality food, those are conversations. I had this with Eric. It was like those are conversations Neil and I have been having for a year now. Of like, hey, this trend is coming and it's getting bigger, and we're here to be a part of it, and we're here to help be that. Like, hey, like let's tell that story. Let's be behind like people wanting to learn more about this, because I mean, if we see wider culture take an interest in higher quality food, that ideally is hopefully allowing them as the consumer to want to spend more on their food, which in turn means more money in the farmer's pocket and less scraping by every year, and that means more ability to diversify the farm away from just industrial farming or industrial cattle. It's like, hey, if there's more consumers willing to pay for that $20 chicken breast we were talking about, like, I mean, that it opens up more opportunity for people willing to try, and at scale, everyone's going to be getting higher quality food and hopefully be able to make a little more money than having to deal with the commodity system. So
I think the thing that I do see in like these smaller communities, I think it's the opportunity to work from home too. And because you don't have to be in the city where your job is, you can move, you can work from wherever you want. And I think you are seeing it hasn't really taken off yet, but I think there is some sort of resurgence of small town America.
Yeah, I think I saw where. Well, this is kind of interesting too. I have a landlord that is a really good friend of mine and lived here his whole life and worked for Bayer as a company representative and was very successful in that industry. And then and he raised his kids here, but he taught them, like he's a very intellectual guy, and he taught them to be culturally diverse. And they have, like when COVID came or whatever, he was getting ready to move out of town to retirement. Loves the Western culture, and was going to move to the West. And, his daughters are very talented, and they just kind of travel around. They're married or have boyfriends. I'm not. He's got several daughters, so I'm not exactly sure what all their life situations are. But just to get to my point, is they live in a certain area for a little while, still working the same job, and then they'll just up and leave and go to a different one, and just experience the culture of, wherever they want to go at that time. And I think it's so much different than what most of us, and like especially in Gen X, when I'm, how we were taught, but it's very unique and it's pretty interesting too.
Yeah.
To see them how they're successful, but totally different in their thinking than what I was taught.
Yeah.
And I think you see more of that, that ability to work remotely and not be tied to a certain geography.
I think it's another thing about like these younger generations, and even the younger millennials like me. It's we've been exposed to a lot, and so we're able to explore different things. Like I think I was telling you or you last night, but like we have some friends in our small group at church, and they're Indian, and they just hosted our crawfish broil for Easter, and we left home with some Indian food, and it's, if you haven't had Indian food, it's some of the most
Indian, is that or American Indian?
Like East Indian.
Yeah, East Indian.
It's some of the most like I've never eaten.
Yeah, their food's amazing.
It's out of this world.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, I'm so mad that I didn't get to grow up with like some of this.
Yeah.
It's like, but some of these, like, now that like the world's more connected than ever, like kids are being exposed to like so many different cultures and stuff, and so that's where I'm like I think this generation is experiencing good things, despite all the negative things you see in the media, but. Right. They're experiencing things I never learned about as a kid.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, you do get more opportunities to go try a different career, or, parents are cooking different foods nowadays, and so I don't know. I think this generation is just they see a lot of different things. I think that's good for growth.
I guess and part of this has been the rise of the cell phone and social media, so you can see different experience regions that you might enjoy just because of your personality, and you look at them and you're like, hey, I would love to experience that. Then you travel there and you're like, hey, I could live here.
Yeah.
And then you just do it,
Yeah, exactly. Cool.
So we've rambled for about an hour and 20 minutes, so I guess we'll stop there. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Agriculture Podcast. You'll be hearing and seeing a lot more of Eric's work in the coming weeks and months, and we hope you enjoyed it today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Peace out, Girl Scouts.